Hi Tim, I wanted to show you how to import in CAE as well as mesh and do a number of different little features. So what I'm going to be showing you is how to get something like this from an ODB, and then how to take that part, convert it to a solid, and then actually do material removal, and then how to properly mesh that. And there's several things. So the final mesh ends up looking something like this. Now you can see that the original part had these lines here where there were flat surfaces because of the coarseness of the mesh. Now the whole point in our study is to look at how uh, or to look at the small displacements on the surface of these parts. So it's important to have some sort of resolution that's meaningful, and that resolution comes from mesh size. So we'll have to explore that a little bit. I really don't know what kind of accuracy we're achieving in displacements given the mesh size. So I'm going to start from scratch. I'm going to start in this new model, and I'm going to right click on this, and I'm going to click import. And I am going to import from an ODB where I did some simulation. These are the parts that are in the ODB. So I want this deformed part. I want to check this import deformed configuration, the step, and then the increment is the last increment. I click OK, and I want getting this part. Right now, this green means that it's an orphan mesh, meaning there's no geometry to it. So if I try to do something like this, you get an error. Part has no geometry. Makes sense. Now, if I were to go over here in my plugins and I create geometry from mesh, and I'll call this test. And I have tried to add volume. I do this, it goes through this process, and it should make new part, which I just need to change to. Okay, now for the most part it did exactly what you would expect, but some of it's a little funky. You can see that the way it handled this stuff isn't quite how you would want it to, and this is the ones up making kind of a bad impact when you go to try to mesh it. So I'm actually going to delete this. Yes. And we are going to do a few operations on this. So with the mesh module, you have a number of different things you can do. You're familiar with seeding. You're also familiar with elements. So for instance, you can't modify anything because there's no geometry right now. You can do some things though by clicking down here. This is like your major tools for mesh manipulation. So what I want to do is I want to convert a solid. So this is technically a solid, and I can convert that to a shell. So let's try convert solid to shell. Click yes. Now it has done that. So if I were to remove selected, I go like this, what you would expect to see is a hollow part. That's exactly what we get. Okay, so we'll put that back. The next thing we're going to do is I'm just going to show you this feature. You can actually take these elements and you can split. So right now we have this quad, just like a square essentially, mesh, right? And let's say I want to split it to a tri mesh. This is what that tri mesh looks like. So once you have a tri mesh, we can actually coarsen it, and we can say convert tri to tet. So we'll do this. Now, if I select a section, you can see we now have a solid mesh. Okay, and the interesting thing to note is if you look at how the TET surface was handled, you don't have any of those weird shapes along this cross section like we did when we just went straight to that convert mesh to 3D plugin. So these nodes are all it needs to actually work now. So if we go over into plugins and we say create geometry, and we say TET base or something, I don't know. We say create. It's going to create that part. I'll go over the part. Oh, actually, yeah, I guess it's in part. And I just click on this. We now have it converted over, and you can see it's not too bad. There are some kind of interesting areas, particularly like down here. You can see that the mesh isn't really uniform everywhere, but regardless. So let's say now I want to do a cut. So I'm going to select a plane to cut in, just kind of random. This is just demonstration. I'm going to click something vertical on the right, I guess, something like that. And it will bring me here. Okay, and I'm going to do a revolve cut. So what that looks like, I don't know if I selected a revolve cut though. Okay. Yeah, I did. Okay, after all that. So let's go back to that process again. I want to select that. I want to select vertical on the right. Now I want it to revolve around this way. So if I make something, let me see. If I do something like that. I think I'm doing this right. Okay, let's see how it works. I gotta stick something in. Okay, I'm gonna do that a little bit different. I'm gonna select this vertical on the right over here, so that I have this surface. Okay, now let's say I make something like this, and I stick an axis. This is what I meant to do. I was just being stupid. Okay, and actually, I might make it smaller so it doesn't go all the way through. It should give us done. And we'll say 360. This is kind of an interesting, kind of more complicated than you would normally see type of thing. So now if we go over into our meshing, so now we need to set how we're going to mesh this. So this orange means that whatever the element type that's defined here isn't compatible with the geometry, at least not without a significant amount of work. What we're going to do is we're going to select TET, and it's going to be free. This interior growth model just means that the triangles get bigger in the inside, even though they might have a certain seating on the outside. We're not going to use that for this at this point. You see it changed color, and this means that we can mesh this. So if I go ahead and seed this, let's say I select a very large seed. Okay, what it's going to do is it's automatically going to pick out the corners of this, and then the mesh will overlap with these things. So I'll apply that, and then I'll just mesh it, and we'll say yes. Now, the mesh is terrible looking. All sorts of things are wrong. as you can see. Especially if you look in around this section. So there are a few ways that we can deal with this. One of the first things to do is we can make some virtual topography, or topology, sorry. The point of this is to take care of the lines that are just kind of randomly doing things that we don't want and that are messing up the mesh quality, right? So I'm going to select this part, click Done, and these are not zooming. Well, actually, maybe it was here. So I had 0.51, 10, 10.01, 0.05. I can get it to go. 0.05, 0.1, 10, 10.01. So what we're going to do that, and it highlights what's going to be removed. And I don't know if I have the optimal settings here, but when we hit create, those pieces are removed. And based off these settings, you can basically fix the problems that you end up seeing. So for instance, I want this removed right here. So if I make this big enough, it's going to highlight some other edges. Or maybe it's related to increasing this size, maybe 30. No, that was a bit. Okay, I did a bunch. So you can remove all sorts of different things by doing this, and you can get a nice mesh. So maybe, so face is smaller than, okay, let's make this 0.3. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that, and it kind of opens up, and that's what we want. So I'm going to dismiss that, and then we're going to go back to the seeding option, and this coarse mesh, let's see first if it actually improved anything. I don't know if it did with this coarse mesh. Oh yeah, it did. You can see it's not as funky in this section. Okay, it's more dominated by the actual seeding rather than those random points that were around. So I'm going to get rid of this. Oh, actually, that's the wrong one. Let's go ahead. We're going to change this to 0.27. This will give us about 100,000 for this part, or maybe 200,000. Fine. Delete mesh. Okay. Mesh it. Okay, and then you can see that we have a fairly decently looking structured mesh that's being displayed. So I hope this helps you understand the process that we're trying to automate. So this meshing stage takes us all the way to the point where we need to interpolate the old data onto this new mesh. And I'll make another video about how to do that with the CAE. So I know there is virtual topography, and all of the mesh commands that I found here, you know, with respect to these different things. And these are hot options, by the way, so they change based off what's available here. So I hope you found this helpful, and let me know if you have any questions. I think it's pretty straightforward. So that's all.